it's Melissa. Happy Thursday. Great to see everyone. Today we are going to talk all about the Cameo 4 Pro. That is the 24-inch Silhouette Cameo. It is the biggest machine, obviously, and it comes with a gigantic cutting mat. Like, I can't even... The thing is huge. It's very difficult to handle, and what ends up happening is I have a lot of trouble with it. So what we are going to do today is talk about how to use the Cameo 4 Pro cutting mat, 24 by 24, but also I'm going to show you how you can cut with the Cameo Pro without a cutting mat, with the smaller cutting mats, and why you might want to decide to do this. So just keep in mind that all of the Silhouette machines, portraits, Silhouette Cameos of all sizes, they can all be used without a cutting mat, okay, for lined material. So lined material are things like sticker paper or vinyl because it has the, the backing on it. Anything that needs to be kiss cut, you can use without a cutting mat. I know that scares a lot of people, but it actually is a huge benefit. And for industrial and commercial cutters, mostly everyone cuts without a cutting mat. Okay, and you're gonna see why. To me, this is it's just difficult to use. So. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do this. This is, again, it's very difficult to even show this in a video because of how big it is. And so this is going to be a little awkward. I'm just going to be upfront with you. So first of all, the Pro has, just like all the other machines, the roller bar here. And along the roller bar, it's difficult to probably see, but there are markings here of where this right roller can go. Okay, so if you are using the 24-inch cutting mat, you can put the roller all the way to the far right side, and then you need to flip the roller lever up so that the bar goes down. Sounds kind of counterintuitive, but you're flipping it back up so the bar goes back down. Now, when you are loading the mat, we are not going to actually cut today, so I'm just going to leave the carrier sheet on here, although you would, well, no, I'll take it off. So a couple of things before you even load the mat. One thing that you're going to notice on the Pro, hopefully you can see this, is that there is an area here, this part, that's adhesive, but there's an area that is within the gridded area. See that? Right where my thumb is? That is not adhesive, but you can place material there. Now, if you are using, the software is going to tell you, when you pick that you are using a 24-inch cutting mat, the software is going to tell you where to place the material. If you are using a 24-inch wide material, so for example, if you were cutting fabric, which honestly is one of the only reasons I would recommend using this giant mat, if you are cutting a 24-inch wide piece of fabric, you can place your material, and they're going to tell you, on the entire area, the entire gridded area. However, if you are cutting a 12 by 12 piece of material, the software is going to tell you, this is why I think it's so awkward, because it's very difficult to even do this. So the software is going to tell you that you need to place the vinyl or material or whatever only on the adhesive area. So that is opposite of what we all know from the older machines, which means that you don't actually place the material for the Pro. This is only for the Pro. And this is only for if it's not 24-inch wide. You're not even going to place the material all the way to the edge of the grid. You're going to only place it on to the edge of the adhesive area. I know it's difficult to see, but hopefully you can see that. Okay, so, and then of course that means you need to put your design in the same positioning in Silhouette Studio, and it's going to tell you. So in Studio, it's going to give you the preview, the 24-inch mat. You're going to tell it you're using a 12 by 12 piece of material, whatever that is, vinyl, HTV, paper, whatever, and it's going to tell you, and you're going to see it's showing you in from the side of the grid, okay? And that's why. The reason is the roller is going to roll in this non-adhesive but still gridded area. So that's why you need to do this. Now, this is very awkward to load. So one of the things that you need to do for loading this machine is you essentially need 3 hands. Okay. or it to just have a mind of its own. It's actually loaded perfectly there. If the mat is not loaded correctly, you're going to end up with bunching. You're going to end up with problems cutting. So right before the Pro was released, there was a software update, and so now all the current versions have this, where you can press the load button, and then you have about 5 to 7 seconds where you can then place the mat, and it will, the sensor that's on here, probably can't see it, but actually all of the Cameo 4 machines have this little sensor. That's a mat sensor. Can you see it? Let's see if I can lift this. It's this right here, this little mat sensor. So what's going to happen is you press load, okay? See how it's flashing? Now I have about 5 seconds. I can line this up and then it will load my mat. So that mat sensor is sensing when my mat is on there and then it loads it in. What this avoids is me having to line this up, try to hold this beast of a mat, and then also press this at the same time, okay? Do you see what's going on here? So that is a huge benefit, and I really would encourage you to use that auto loading with the mat sensor. Again, that's a feature that's on all the Cameo 4s. So again, to use it, and you can use it with all of these, press the load button, okay? And then hold your mat in there with 2 hands, so it's even, and then let it load in, okay? And you can see what's happening. It's pulling that in, all right? So, a couple other things. If you're using the 12 by 12 mat or a smaller mat, you want to use there's 2 gray lines here. You want to use the right gray line to line up the edge of this mat. If you're using this giant 24 by 24 mat, I apologize that this is so awkward, you're actually going to line it up with the left line. And I know you can't see, you're seeing all of me. That's what you're going to do for that. Okay, now, all of this information is why I am recommending, when possible, you do not use this 24-inch mat. It's great that you can cut a 24-inch, you know, whatever, 24 by 24-inch piece of fabric. However, it is so difficult to maneuver this thing. Look, you literally have to hold it like this to load it and get close enough to your machine, or you need another person to help you. Okay, so, and this is not necessary. You can cut this sheet of 12 by 12 vinyl without the cutting mat, or you can use a 12 by 12 cutting mat, or a 12 by 24 cutting mat, or a 15-inch cutting mat. So there are other options aside from using this giant mat, which has that grid line issue, not issue, but it's different than what everybody is used to with the older machines, and it has the aligning issue. Not issue. Again, just that difference that we're all these little changes are what can contribute to having issues, things that you end up needing to troubleshoot. So, again, you can just use this material without a cutting mat, okay? Now, if you're afraid that your roller is too close to the edge, so this roller is actually on the 9-inch setting. If you were to move your roller over, which you can do, this is the 12 by 12 without a mat. This is 12 by 12 with a mat. But if you put your roller here, okay, your roller ends up being close to the right edge of your material. So for that reason, I actually recommend that you move your roller in. Okay, and that way, even if it slips a little bit, it's not slipping off the edge of the mat. You can do this even if you're using a mat. Just make sure that the roller doesn't roll on the adhesive area of the cutting mat, or what's going to end up happening is you're going to gunk up your roller, okay? All right, so you've got that. The other thing that you need to know, and I should have pulled this out prior, but when we were, and I'll grab it. If you're using the cutting mat, you should use the cutting mat support. Okay, so this is the supports that come with the Cameo 4 Pro. Okay, it's a 5-piece setup. Okay, it just slips under the machine. And this is used as a mat support. Okay, so your mat is supporting. Let's move this over. And what that does, again, this is, here we go with awkwardness. Why isn't it going? Let's see. Okay, so you've got it lined up. And what this does is so that it keeps the top part of your mat flat. Now, really what you need is you need the entire thing supported. Again, I am so sorry. This video is super awkward. It's just because this thing is so big and I need you to be able to see. So this is going to give my mat some additional support. And really, when I cut, I turn it the other way on this table so that I have support in the front of the back and the back. If your machine is fighting with gravity to pull this giant mat in and out, that's where you end up with your cuts being off because it's pulling in the opposite direction. So this mat support is helpful for that. Now, the mat support also doubles as a roller, okay, a roll feeder. So in order to use the roll feeder portion, you're going to take out this middle block, okay, and you're going to adjust wherever this piece is. So let's say you have an 18-inch piece of vinyl, let's see, or 20, I guess this one's 20, okay? So you're going to adjust this, and this roll is not really wide enough for this to work. I have a larger one, I'll show you. Just pull that over here. We've got this piece, and I have blog posts on all of this so you know how to put this together. So this is different than the other Cameo 4s where it has the drawer on the bottom that is the roller. So, and again, I have this giant 24-inch roll of vinyl. It's 24 inches wide. This is very heavy. You don't want a 100-foot roll. A 30-foot roll is about max. The only reason I would suggest that you use something like this is if you are going to cut off the mat. Okay, do you see how it's just pulling out, rolling nicely? Okay, so if you have, you're not going to be able to, let me see if I can pull you to the side so you can kind of see how I'm doing this. So, again, you're going to load this 2 hands, okay? But what happens is if you are using a giant roll, and again, I got this giant 100-yard roll prior to when the Cameo Pro came out so I could test to see what worked and what didn't. And I can tell you that if you are trying to cut off the roll like this, it's too heavy for the machine. Now, of course, it does roll, but it's just too much pressure. So if you insist on doing this, I would pull the roll out a little bit so that you can do it that way, okay? And just keep an eye on it. But you can do that. Instead, I would recommend if you're going to do 24-inch rolls, and you want to cut off the roll, get the 30-yard or the 50-yard max, okay? Okay, so that's that. Again, these are super heavy, but it is nice that you have this built-in roller. And you have, obviously, depending on the size of the roll, and this one I would push all the way in, these rollers themselves can be adjusted depending on the width of the roll itself. So it just sits right in there, okay? And then you can pull off of that, all right? Okay, so I know that's a lot of information to cover. The Cameo Pro is a little bit different when it comes to loading the mat, loading the materials, the different lines, why that mat has an adhesive area and a non-adhesive area. And if you don't load the material on the mat correctly, if you don't load the mat into the machine correctly, you're going to end up with cutting issues, things cutting in the wrong areas, and various issues like that. So do make sure that you are following that. But again, my recommendation, my strong recommendation is if you can cut without a mat, cut without a mat. If you insist on using a mat, and I understand it's a security blanket for a lot of people, use a smaller mat, either the 12 by 12, 12 by 24, 15 by 15, okay? It's just, they're easier to handle. The grid lines are different. And I think that you'll just have a little bit of an easier time, okay? Someone's asking, do the cut settings change if you're using a mat versus no mat? I typically do not change my cut settings. However, you are right in your thinking that there should be more force when you have a mat. However, these mats are so pliable and thin that it really doesn't make a difference. What I would say is that the default cut settings for vinyl and HTV specifically, when used with the Cameo 4, are not what they should be. You need to increase the, again, this is like a caveat of the Pro. You've heard me say time and time again to increase the force when cutting vinyl and HTV from 4 to 14. I would not recommend that when using the Pro. Instead, I would recommend leaving the force where it is at 4 and increasing the blade depth to 2. Okay, so instead of 1, increase the blade depth to 2. The reason being, for some reason, excessive force on the Pro causes the material to bunch up. And so we end up seeing that problem, okay? So instead of that, I increase the blade depth to 1, from 1 to 2 instead of increasing the force, which is what I recommend on all the other machines. Okay, so I can have a whole blog on just the Pro and all the little caveats, but that is one thing to keep in mind. And again, this is a bigger machine, a larger machine. It has, so it is going to have some differences just because of how it's built. You can see it is built differently. The added support that's needed and everything like that. So a lot of, if you hear people saying they're having trouble with their Pro, it's probably something that can be worked out. I haven't had issues with mine other than when I was realizing, like, why is my mat not loading correctly, or why am I getting bunching? As soon as I changed the blade set depth instead of the force, that fixed one problem. As soon as I started loading it, how it's telling me in software, that fixed those problems. But anyway, there's a lot of differences here if you're specifically if you're used to the old machine. But I can't stress enough that if you are not using 24-inch wide material with a mat, then I would cut without a mat or with a smaller mat. Okay, you'll eliminate one whole scope of potential pitfalls. Okay. All right, you guys, I hope you have a fabulous day and enjoy the rest of your Thursday and the rest of your week. See ya.